The question is, when you get there, is it going to be all the way flat?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because I stopped to get gas, and I was like, I'll go ahead and just fill it up on here. And it took a very long time, and it did not fill up. But I know how to do it. It was just a weird gas pump. It was over at the racetrack.
Okay.
So I'm going to try it again after class. But that's why I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm surprised you're even here after a flat tire.
Yeah, like my
Usually students will walk outside and they'll say,
I'm over it.
students walk outside to look at their car and they'll say like, is my tire low?
I'm not going to
Email the teacher. And it's like not even low. They're just like, I think I see a bulge. That's not worth it. Not worth it, Nichols. I can't come. There's no way.
And I don't
I
have
rolled
a
on the
spare
room
tire.
here.
Someone stabbed my tire, Nichols. The knife's still sticking out of it. I mean, the air is still in it, but I bet eventually. So let's see. We're probably going to have to skip talking about the one I don't like as much anyway. Oh, please don't tell me y'all all talked about the Chanticleer one. Did you all read The Partner's Tale?
Yes.
Okay, because is that the only one I had on there? I thought I had like the Nun's Priest Tale too.
Yeah, you have the Nun's Priest.
Did you read the Nun's Priest, but you didn't like it as much?
No.
Because we just don't have time to. That's when I said Chanticleer. That's what I was talking about. Was the Nun's Priest Tales because it's about the rooster. Yeah, I feel like that one's less. Yeah, see the chicken one. That's all you even think. It's like chicken one. So it's less to me valuable as the other one. So I generally don't like to. If I have to cut it, and because we had the funeral thing the other day, I mean, there's just no. I just don't feel like it's one we need to spend time with because it's less interesting.
You got me today. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my book because I thought you had the reading online. So I'm just gonna read it online.
I do have the reading online.
Well, not for the next week.
Oh, next week.
Yeah, you got me because I didn't bring my book today.
I'm still confused as to what you're saying.
Okay. The reading for next week, you don't have it on your online or whatever.
What, like Dr. Foster's?
Yes, see, it's not on there.
I read a synopsis of that. It's insane.
Yeah, it's
a crazy
weird.
Story.
But the sad thing is it almost functions the same way as the synopsis does. So you're like, wow, this synopsis is crazy. And then you read it and you're like, this just feels like a slightly expanded synopsis. To me, I don't really like the story that much. A lot of people say they do, but I just always found it to be a little...
It's a good time of year to read it.
What?
It's a good time of year to have it assigned to read. I thought, because it was all like raining when I read it, and it's kind of spooky. And, like,
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah, I guess there is some
I was
spooky
like,
stuff.
this
Yeah.
is interesting. like I read a horror story. I'm all creeped out now.
Maybe I should push it back a little bit. With the... Wait, I just realized. Can I even see anything? I'm sorry, guys. I'm in like Silver Spring. I know you can hear me, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But then I was realizing, like, yeah, look, they're seeing the tops of our heads. Like, I'm sorry, this is like so cruel. I just realized this, like, because the other day when I came in here, I realized too, like when I said, because I won't say who, because I don't know if anybody wants to know. When I said, oh hey, yeah, we actually don't have class today, because I did send an email out and I felt kind of bad that somebody did show up.
Who showed up?
I said I'm not going to say. That is okay. Brenda sent me. Okay, so Brenda came. So the camera wasn't pointed at anybody, and I felt bad when I left. I was like, Brenda can even see me. She's just like, just hears a disembodied Nichols voice going, "Yes, I have a funeral today. I hope blah blah blah." She's like, "What? A funeral? I have a funeral. And there's no class. I'm sorry." And I was like, "Okay, all right." And like, I felt really bad later because I was like, she couldn't even see me. I mean, it could have been anybody saying it. So like, I want to make sure that we all can see each other. Nobody has to see me though. I feel like I'm the loudest one, so we don't have to see my face. The rest, everybody gets to, like, you can judge how well I'm doing based on their reactions. It's so funny. I'll just like look at each other. Yeah. You're like, oh look there. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna close this window. We're gonna pull up Partner's Tale. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're not talking about Dr. Faustus this week. Do you feel like you need to bring the book when we're going to be talking about something next week from the book?
No, I was just gonna read it today.
Oh,
Yeah,
snap.
Like in between.
Yeah. That ain't gonna happen.
No.
You just got Faustus. So we're starting at Partner's Tale. In fact, I probably should ask you guys, like I always like to, especially since I haven't had a chance yet to read the discussion posts. I've been trying to get through those first essays. Y'all kind of benefited because the Brit Lit, I will generally grade yours earlier than other people's. In fact, I think this next time, since you have another census analysis essay, I'm probably going to grade yours first. So the quicker you get that one in, the quicker I'll grade it.
The discussion post?
Yeah, I'll probably check after every time I grade a set of papers. So I'll grade y'all's first, and then if there aren't like one or two there, I'll grade them, and then I'll go and I'll grade the 1301 papers. Then I'll come back around and come to you guys, and then I'll go do the 1302s, and then I'll come back around to you guys. Because they're just so easy to grade the census analysis papers. They're very easy. But I haven't done the discussion post yet. So I actually haven't even seen what your thoughts are on Partner's Tale. So anything you say to me is going to kind of be new. I might pull it up on the computer that you can see right there. But it'll be so small you can't read it. I might pull it up if I'm not hearing anything from anybody, so I'll just have to look it up. But I don't know. We'll see. This is a challenge, guys. You don't have to remember what you said. I mean, you say new things. You're like, I've forgotten everything. Everything's gone.
It's gone. It was a week ago.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, I guess I will look it up. Did you like the Partner's Tale?
Yes.
Yes. So detailed. We get a yes from one person and a mm-hmm from the rest. So I just have to roll through it. Let's see. Y'all can read it off the computer if you want to. Right there. You can't.
I can't even.
You can't even see who it is. We have Hannah talking about a moral.
Yep, can't even.
What?
I can't even look at it.
No, you
It's
can't.
closed.
Yeah, it's closed. Three people dying. The computer's telling me to do something. Greed is the root of all evil. That was you. And then you talked about the chicken one, which I don't even want to. We don't have time for that.
Ain't no that.
Ain't nobody got time for chicken. Feel bad for Allison because you talked a lot about the chicken.
It was about fables.
Yeah, that was interesting. Because I didn't know the different little fables. That was you, right? And you put
Yeah.
that it was like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I have
still
read that
look
one.
at Aesop's fables at home, so.
Okay. I like this.
I didn't realize it was just an expansion of an Aesop fable, actually. So this is new to me too. Because I know a lot of stuff about some of the things that we read, but I don't know like all the depth about other things. And I guarantee you that's absolutely what that was. It in like the pre-reading in there?
I don't know.
You don't know? Like I would be really embarrassed if it says like, yes, this is based on an Aesop fable. I'm like, I never even remembered that.
Looking right over your head.
A lot of talk about greed here. We got some more greed. The drunkenness, drunk people. Well, I'm not a very fast reader. This is very hard to do. Stop me if you don't want to be bored.
Hold on. So is
Avarice?
Yes. Is that greed?
I believe so. I always actually thought that it was angry thoughts and feelings. But if you're asking me and it seems like it's in that context.
Well, it says it at the very end of like this intro. In, like,
Yeah, it's apparently extreme greed. So
Okay.
excessive or insatiable desire for wealth or gain, greediness, cupidity. Yeah, I'd always thought that the word avarice sounded like some sort of evil, not greed. So I guess I just had it wrong. But yeah, I mean, the whole story is about greed, so it's like not like I could miss that. I just didn't know that one word, I guess. So, greed. I thought I was going to find more stuff out of those discussion posts. It was sort of like just
No.
greed.
Yeah.
Greed.
All that from the book.
I mean, I'm sure when I grade them individually, I'll be like, oh, there's a lot more here. Nothing you want to talk about specifically? Usually I'll have something to say. Something you want to bring up.
Do you, I wondered about, like, the old man, do y'all think he knew that the gold was under there, and that's why he sent them there, and he knew that it would probably kill them because they were being so mean to him? Or do you think he was just trying to get them away, and it was just coincidence that they came across gold?
You know, I
They were
think
asking
I
about
read
that
this story a
so
long
I
time
didn't
ago.
let them that way.
It was very familiar. Like,
That's what he said.
Yeah.
I swear I've
And
heard
they
this
all
story
died.
before.
Yeah.
See, I wasn't ready because I didn't think the third guy, the younger guy, was gonna die. And then, I read it and I was like, what? They all gone. Yeah.
So I just wonder, like, what all insight the old man had. Like, if he was really aware of all that was going to happen. Because they were looking for death, and he sent them to where they would all die, and where the gold coins were.
Mm-hmm.
And greed is kind of like death, in a sense, because that's what killed them. So I don't know. That was my main thing, is I was wondering if the old man knew all along what he was doing, or if it was just coincidence that.
I have a feeling he kind of knew.
That's kind of what I think too. Unless they were being so mean to him.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like listening to y'all talk. I didn't want to interrupt. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna wait my turn. I would agree. I don't necessarily think that the text makes me. It doesn't give me enough to think this must be what's happening. But I've always liked to think that the over there into the tree, the death. Oh, the money is death, and they all forget about the person because shoot, who cares now? I always like to think that death is the guy
Yeah,
who
that's what I
tells
was gonna
them
say.
death's right over there. Like he's death, but he's over there.
He's like you said, you thought greed maybe was death.
Mhm.
I feel like the old man
was-
kind of was that personification of it.
And I think too, like if I imagine like a scenario in which everybody who comes looking for death is tested, I imagine that greed is one test for some, but in this case, since he's telling the story, and it does make a lot of sense that greed would be something that would bring death, probably more than almost anything else. I mean, what are the 7 deadly sins? There's greed, there's lust.
sloth,
Somebody might kill somebody over lust, right? Wanting somebody and taking them from them.
Jealousy.
Is jealousy another one, or is greed, lust, sloth? But I feel like you're less likely to. I don't know. You might die from laziness, but I mean, sloth is more like if we talk about somebody dying from laziness, probably Bartleby the Scrivener
Yes.
is probably the best version of that.
Oh my God.
I feel bad. We don't even have that textbook anymore, so we can't read that story, and it pisses me off. We have a different textbook now, and they don't have that. And I always felt like that was such a good story for essentially teaching. I don't know. It almost is like it functions like a fable. Like it's a fable, like of something that wouldn't really happen, but you can talk about.
Passive.
Greed, lust, sloth, pride, gluttony, envy.
It says the story is against gluttony, gambling, and swearing.
And swearing, oh, like a real swearing, not like bad words.
Yeah.
I mean, greed and gambling. I mean, I feel like people gamble as a result of a need for greed.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? Swearing, promising something. I mean, I would say often many of the promises we make are as a result of trying to.
It says pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, anger, and sloth.
Anger, that was the one. It's interesting too, because I wouldn't even necessarily feel that any of these people who do the killing, it's very strange. You have killings that are happening, but not at all out of anger, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
They're not
usually
angry at each other.
No, they
They're
want.
just trying to be sly and look after themselves, but they're not angry at other people they're killing.
it's angerless murder. Like they're killing
strictly
purely for greed.
benefit, you know?
And not even say benefit, it's not even necessarily benefit. I think that's the problem of greed is what he's getting to, is that true greed is like there's more money than any of them could ever spend under that tree.
And they still want it.
All of
Bigger.
it.
Even if they split it, yeah, but they're like, as soon as they see that much, they're like, that part right there could easily be mine as well as this part that is mine.
That's kind of like how greed can never be satisfied, really. It just keeps
It's like
going.
insatiable.
Yeah, completely and totally insatiable. That's why I find it so scary.
That's scary.
I don't necessarily find it hard to conceptualize, but I did voluntarily become an English teacher. So I don't really care for money that much. It's something that's, I guess if I ever found like, I don't know, like I don't understand the decisions of people. Did you hear about that lady who was in Wisconsin or, no, it was like Manitoba, Canada, or some place in Canada. They had like a lottery drawing. I was gonna say, I don't know why I hate this phrase so much. You ever heard that phrase like somebody says like the video went viral?
Mm-hmm.
You ever see on the news where they're like, and this story went viral, and it's something you haven't even heard about? And I'm always pissed off. I'm like, if it went viral, wouldn't I know what it is? Wouldn't almost everybody? Wouldn't it have at least popped up on Reddit in 24 hours?
Yeah, it's like they use that term religiously.
Yeah, it's like viral can be like 30 people liked it on Facebook when we posted it. It went viral. And it's like, if it pops up on Ellen, that's something that went viral. Usually, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if it pops up on the news and like you see it and you're like, oh, I saw that, that's viral. Like, but if nobody saw it, that's not viral. Anyways, this is a little problem I have. But this video popped up and this did go viral. It was a lady who, she wrote her name and her nephew's name or like her grandson's name on a lottery ticket, and she wrote his name on there too for good luck, as somebody who was a beneficiary or something like that. He said, hey, can you write my name on there too? And he's like for good luck or something like that. And like maybe he pitched a little money in, maybe he didn't, I can't remember. And she's like, yeah. So she put like, it was her idea. She's like, I'll put your name on there too for good luck. And like he's like, and we'll split the winnings. She's like, yeah, we'll split the winnings. And then they won. They won like, I think 1.7 million or something like that. And so they'd split it, like they both get like 700, 800,000 or something like that. And when they were both given their separate checks for however much they got of the half, she got pissed. And she was like, give me that check. That's my check. That's my money. And he was like, huh? She's like, I want that money. And he's like, well, I thought you said I could have half of it. And she's like, no, we agreed half if it won this, not if it won the whole thing. And I was like, that doesn't even make any sense. So you agreed to get half if y'all won less, not if you won more.
He still get half. His name was on it.
Yeah, his name was on the ticket. It was signed. Yeah. And so she was like, I'm going to sue the lottery commission. She's walking in angry, so I'm going to get a lawyer. And lawyers cost a heck of a lot of money.
Money on lawyers and not even get the money.
And it's just like, I mean, how greedy can you be? You have 800 grand more than you had yesterday, and you're like, it's not enough. And so I feel like that's the issue there is like, I mean, it's not even so much that these guys are like, oh, I want to benefit. It's like the greed is just like purely about I have to have more. And I don't know why, but sometimes just getting a little bit can make you want so much more. I don't know, what is that? That's happened to you before, right, with something. And I consider gluttony to be like the food form of greed, so it's the only real concept I have. Do you ever sit and like you eat something and it's amazing?
And
Like let's say like, oh, here's the best example, maybe for me, I don't know. Maybe it's not for you. But you know like you go somewhere and they have those little cheesecake bites?
Yes.
And you're like, oh, cheesecake bite. And you go,
You can't just eat one.
oh, geez. And they've got like a whole plate of them there, and nobody's eating anything.
So
And there's nobody there, and it's just you. So you're just like, anybody want to take these home? Yeah, I'll take them to my family. And then you're just like going, pop a cheesecake bite, another cheesecake bite, more cheesecake bite. And then like your stomach starts to hurt. You might even throw up. No, I don't get that bad. But like, so something. I mean, do this all the time with like all kinds of random things. Like I'll eat like my wife made brownies this weekend, and it was like she made them perfect. You know, like the perfect kind of brownie where like you don't burn the bottom, but there's no liquidiness to them,
Mm-hmm.
and even the edge pieces aren't hard. They're like you bite through and you're like, oh, it's good. But then the center pieces also aren't like too gooey.
Mm-hmm.
They're just still perfect brownies, and you're like, that's amazing. And I could not stop from just going, oh,
Eating one.
oh. And like I knew I'd had enough, and I was like, so good. Ow. And it was I couldn't just eat one and be satisfied. I knew that's what I should have. I knew it was delicious, and I could hold on to that flavor forever, but I couldn't stop myself. I'd eat more. Now, granted, that doesn't hurt anybody really but myself. Greed is a little bit different because wanting more usually implies you want more of what somebody else has.
Technically, it could hurt somebody else if somebody else wanted a brownie and you ate one.
Yeah.
I'm so gluttonous. They're like, could I have some? And I'm like, get away.
These are my brownies.
But yeah, I feel like it's. I've always thought. What now? Snack bag. Yeah.
I had some lunch that day. I just happened to.
Oh, is that what the snack bag was? You were in a situation where there was free food available and you put it in a bag for later?
Yeah.
Oh. That's just smart. That's pretty smart.
But no, I had brought my lunch because I stay up here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I had an extra plastic bag in my lunchbox because I had pretzels in it, and I had ate all my pretzels. But then there was like a whole tray of cookies, and they were just, nobody was gonna eat them, so I just like stuffed the cookies in the bag. And I don't think she saw my lunchbox, so she looked at me with all sincerity and was like, do you just bring plastic bags to stick cookies in when you just happen to come across them? And so it was so funny. She was like dead serious. And I'm like, no, I just brought my lunch today. And then everybody else's comments made it worse, and it just...
I was kind of worried that story was going in a different direction at first because I'm thinking back to on this campus what foods have been available to take, and I wasn't thinking about any time. I remember seeing it at the time when there was cookies available for free.
It was constitutional jeopardy.
Constitutional jeopardy. See, the only time I was thinking I was like, I remember Hot Dog Day, where they had those huge hot dogs the size of your forearm, and I was like, you're like, well, I had a bag, and I was like, did you take like 4 hot dogs? And like, can I have a hot dog? Yeah, bag. Can I have another hot dog? Yeah, bag. And you got like a bag of 4 hot dogs you're taking home with you. I was like, that's ridiculous.
Left of those because I don't even like that. But if it's cookies, I mean, I can just stick a couple in a bag and take it to my son later. I'm like, he would love cookies.
Those hot dogs are so good. Now I can't even think about the cookies anymore because I'm like, hot dogs are so good. Those grilled hot, oh gosh. Food's a problem for me. I need to stop talking. So the greed in this story is very interesting in that it does bring danger to others in a real way, not the snack bag way. Where's my food? Yeah. So I mean,
it was just a really funny situation. I just had no one thought it was coincident.
It worked out in your favor.
It did. It really did.
tell me.
You never know when you might find a plate of cookies.
She was impressed. She genuinely was. She was like, I knew you were prepared.
Or if you're in an emergency situation, somebody needs a cookie, right? So, I mean, this guy, he's going into cardiac arrest. I have a cookie. It's fine. I have a question about, so the Wife of Bath's tale, maybe we sometimes did, maybe we sometimes didn't disagree about whether the tale was effective. I feel like we all thought that it was kind of unfair that the rapist sort of gets away with everything. If he really changed, maybe, but the story doesn't indicate that he truly goes through a change. And so, in this story,
I didn't really like herself. I kind of liked her personality more than just like the tale itself.
Yeah, I like that prologue.
Mm-hmm.
and that probably is why she has such a long prologue and not as much in the way of the tale in terms of like an 800-word prologue and a 400-word tale. But in this one, usually when I talk to people, he doesn't go on quite as long as she does. He's got like a prologue that starts on 329 and it moves to 462, and then his tale itself goes from 463 down to line 968. So he's got a 500-word tale and about 150 to 200-word prologue, and then something a little bit before that. So his is about twice as long, and his is slightly longer than her tale. But we tend to value her prologue more than her tale. But people generally
like his tale better.
I
did like his tale
than her tale.
I like his tale.
And I wonder if it's from maybe a sense of there. Do you feel like this has maybe more of a sense of completion as a tale than the wife's tale?
Yes.
I shouldn't have asked such a yes or no question. That was a terrible idea. You're like, mm-hmm.
No, I mean, it really does, though.
In what way? I guess that's what I could say. In what way does this feel more complete than the wife's tale?
there's an ending, and it feels like they actually all went through something. It depicts like each one's kind of journey on it, like why they kind of decided that. It's more relatable. I mean, I guess not.
Cold.
Yes.
You can turn it completely, like it's still hitting you. You can turn it more, and it'll.
Just like stop it.
Any of y'all feel hot and y'all want it?
It's kind of like we just put it over here.
Yeah, there we go. The partner's tale has like, it's not like real people, it's just a story that's happening.
The Partner's Tale is not real people. It's just.
Well, I mean, like it is real people, but you know, it's more like you see the story being told, and then it ends. It's not really resolved, but the story's over with, and then the partner kind of gives his little input, whatever. So then it does make it feel more complete in that way. I think. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess for me, everything feels complete in the sense of like the arcs of the characters. Everybody feels like they go through a full story. Like we don't know what happened. Like what happens at first? It's like their friends is dead. And they're like, where is this? And they who killed him? Oh, Death. Oh, let's go find him. Where's Death? What now? Yeah, I think it's a person.
Do you think they think Death is a person because they're drunk off their butts, or do you think they just? Because obviously they've heard the term death before, and they realize, you know.
I don't know that we're necessarily supposed to, because I mean he is a preacher. Yeah, well, in a sense, I mean he sells pardons, but when he sells pardons, he's got to be a good enough speaker on the word of God that people are willing to think that he is a good speaker beyond just his position in the church. And I want to give this guy money for my pardon. So what did you ask?
I don't remember.
Golly. I'll just keep talking in the direction that I was going. And hopefully.
If you think they thought that Death was a person because they were drunk.
Yes, thank you. That's much helpful. So as a Christian speaker, he might set up allegories, parables, and so this does kind of function like a parable or a fable kind of thing. Well, I guess a parable is really nothing more than like a mini short Christian fable, right? I mean, it's almost the same thing, but it's like usually an instructive tale, which a fable can be as well. So when he tells his little story, setting up Death as a character, it's almost like a sense of maybe dramatic irony, where we're supposed to understand Death is not a real person. Yeah. Nobody would name their kid Death.
Yeah. So we're not supposed to look at it so much into the parable or the fable itself, but more as the overall picture of what the partners do.
I guess we shouldn't say, would they have known Death was a. I think that we're supposed to assume that there's a character that could be named Death, and they wouldn't find that odd, and that they wouldn't even associate that with the actual act of death.
So just kind of hear it as he tells it.
Literal.
Yeah, kind of. Not looking at it too literally. Like we're just supposed to like accept that these people would think, this Death is not a. But if we sit there and we think. But wouldn't they figure out that his name is Death? And that, we shouldn't go near him because this is a trick. And we show up and it might be a dude in a sickle, with a sickle and a cloak. I think that we're almost supposed to think that it's almost to them as though they've heard, he was killed. Oh, by who? Thomas. And they hear it almost like it's just a normal everyday name. And they're like, where's Thomas? And they go try to look for him. So like to them, I don't think Death is supposed to be even anything beyond just a normal name. It's only meant to be like a marker for us where we're reading it and we go, they shouldn't go. Yeah. Almost like a thing where we're watching a horror movie and the dude's walking up the stairs. We're like, don't, he's up there, stop. And he's like, la 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 la, going up the stairs. And like we know that something's bad's going on. They don't, and it's kind of that deal that's going on. So yeah, it's set up in that I think that sort of parable sense is like a preacher would tell it, to where there's preachers that often have like a sense of flair to what they say.
especially that guy, because he's already admitted that he's, going to say what he needs to get money. He's not.
He's such a messed up guy.
He's a very, very bad guy. So.
Oh, we could bring up. Oh, we do so many good things with this. Actually, I don't even know if I can limit myself now because I just thought of like 50 things.
All at once. It's weird how the mind works.
So we talk about how his tale works. So I think because he's a more gifted speaker, he tells tales all the time. I mean, you have like, hey, our friend died, so we have a good thing that starts it off. They all show up, all three of them. And he's like, we'll keep an eye on the stuff. You go secure us a way to take it. And so he's like, got it. So he drives off to town. And he's like, bro, we could just split this money into two. So much easier. He gets here. We kill him. Now we have a way to get it out of here because he brings us the way. We both have the money. Boom. Split it that way. It's awesome. And so we like that because we're like, oh, there's something more sinister going on. And like it's going to be like we're going to see the effects of greed and how it causes these two people to kill this other one. That's smart. Then we figure out he's going and getting like 2 wine bottles. He's like, what I can do is when I show up, we celebrate. We drink some wine, got some poison in it. Boom, they're dead. Maybe I get them to help me load the stuff up first. It's a little heavy. Maybe not. I don't know. Regardless, I've got a wagon. I've got the stuff. They're dead. My money. And I kind of wonder if the two eventually would have somehow figured out a way to kill off each other too. It's like, yay, my money. So, he shows up. They kill him. And you're like, oh, no. So that's how it works out. Okay, cool. And then they're like, hey, look, wine. I actually kind of, I don't know if there's a temptation, I think it might end there, where they kill somebody and you're like, oh, see, that's what greed can do. But I thought since there was wine and he brought it, I just knew, I was like, oh, man, there's wine just sitting there for the drinking. They want to celebrate. They're going to drink it. And sure enough, they do, and then they die. And it all wraps itself up so perfectly. Greed didn't just kill one. They all had greed, and it killed them all. And now who gets the money? Nobody. They were all alive yesterday, and they were fine. Who killed our friend? Justice. And they're like, well, screw justice. There's money. And then they all end up dying as a result. It's kind of like, I love this movie. You probably haven't watched it because it came out in the 2000s. Now we're in the 2010s. Who would watch movies from back then, right? But No Country for Old Men.
Oh, I love that movie.
Really good movie. It won Best Picture a few years ago in the Academy Awards. But
have y'all seen
it really is a perfect movie to go with this.
That's a good movie.
It goes directly with this, doesn't it? Because a dude finds out in the desert this big old pack of money. And it was in a drug deal, and they all fought over it, and he finds it. And he tries to take it, and I mean, he didn't have that money yesterday, but suddenly he finds all this money and wants to keep it. But these drug dealers, they want their money, and so they start chasing it down. And so it just becomes this thing where there's so many people involved in the greedy taking of this money that if they would just all leave it alone, nobody would be dying. And it's sort of like the money itself almost becomes a non-issue. It's just a thing that everybody desires, and they'll just sort of chase it. And that's kind of what it is here. They all want it. None of them ever end up having it, and it ends up bringing them all to ruin. It's a perfect little story he tells.
I want to know, though, what...
It's got a good moral.
Yes.
I want to know what the part of the friend dying and then starting off avenging that death, I want to know how that plays into it. Because he could have told the story just as, oh, here's 3 drunkards, somebody tells them there's gold, they go get it. But instead, they start out avenging somebody who's dead. And I wonder if maybe there's like an underlying thing there, like you can't beat death or something like that, because they tried to do that, and obviously you can't, and we know that when we're hearing it. So I just wonder why that was part of the story.
And see, I think we're maybe supposed to take the implication that the previous guy, the friend, he showed up, and whatever it was that he needed to see to bring about his demise was there. And I assume it was also greed related. So he shows up, and his greed leads to his death. And they're like, what happened? Where's our friend? Somebody killed our friend. Oh, yeah, Death did that. He's over there. And so I mean, this it's supposed to be a strong emotion, the emotion of vengeance.
Yeah.
I mean, the need for vengeance. I must avenge my friends. Somebody has killed them. They all go, we can do it together. Yes, we'll get him. And it's greed is so strong, and I think that's what he's trying to say. Greed is so strong that overpowers the strongest need to defend those you love. I can see that if I was like really pissed off, and I'm like, pissed off at somebody like that did something, and I go out and but I see like a briefcase of money on the ground, and for some reason I know that nobody could ever track me to it. I would say like, oh my gosh. Suddenly everything I was going to do that day changes, and I've got to figure out how do I do with something with this money. I was so funny. I saw this like meme online that I don't know why I held my phone up in the air. I mean, that's just where I saw it. Wow. I saved it and I won't look it up, but
360 spin with it and everything.
I won't look it up because that probably will take me too long to find. I'll just sit here doing that thing I sometimes do where I go, hold on, it's right here. I just gotta, But why would I go through the whole motion of the thing I said I don't want to do? But I saw this thing where it was like a dad. He said, my son, it showed like a son returning money to like the police. It says, my son found $2,000 and returned it to the police. I hope the next kid I have is not a complete idiot. Or something like that. I mean, the guy.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was essentially like the guy was saying like, man, what idiot would return that much money?
Yeah.
But there is like kind of insider by his head. There is that kind of, you always wonder. Do you always wonder like, if you found just a huge gob of money, what would you do? Would you take it to the police?
Yeah. So I think it's easy to say what you would do, like just to say,
Yeah.
oh, no, I did the right thing, but then it's so different when it actually happens.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you just don't know.
Statistically, what am I saying statistically? I mean, I've read a couple of psychological studies. Let's be honest, I've read the abstracts. But I did go through and kind of look at the data tables and stuff that they had. But essentially, they measured people in what they would do in situations. Oh, no, I actually did read some of this stuff because it was in the Dan Ariely book, which I own, and so I did read some of that. But they looked at what will people do when they're put in a situation where they can cheat, and almost everybody cheats just by a little bit. I mean, like, think about driving down the highway. You drive down the highway, like, sometimes, right? Not everybody does this, but the speed limit's, like, say, 75. And you go, you know what? I could drive, like, 76, 77. I'll be okay.
I go 80, like 85.
Or 80, 85. But like people will always they say, here's the line that I'm allowed to go to. And I might cheat just by a little bit. And in most cases, people will just cheat just by a little bit. And if you see like a bag of money, I mean, I think that means that probably if you're completely reckless, you'll just try to take it and be like, I can hide this. I can figure out what to do with it. But if you find a briefcase of money, probably what most people would do is that you'd open it up, and if there was any sort of non-symmetrical nature to it, probably what you'll do is, like, let's say you see a whole briefcase full of, like, hundreds and stuff, right? And you see, like, oh my gosh. And if it doesn't look completely and totally symmetrical in every way, so there's no room for anything else, if there's, like, a little bit of something that's off, or, like, the money moves, you might go, let's take one brick of this. And you figure out a way to hide that brick real quick, put it somewhere. Probably you probably could even, the smartest thing is to do is like bury it underneath something, like and just in the ground in the field somewhere. Someplace nobody would reasonably go and won't even get mowed over, And if it did get mowed over, you could still find it. And then you go take the briefcase back. I'm not saying everybody would do that, but I'd say that in some degree, somebody's going to try to figure out, how do I get just a little bit and still be a good person? And you can rationalize it however you think. You're like, this briefcase of money, who's carrying this much money in a briefcase? Can't be used for great purposes.
If I had a briefcase of money, I'd be worried it's related to something
So
bad.
Right, so somebody's going to say, yeah, this might be related to some drugs or something, so I need to do the right thing and take it to the police. But if it's used for drugs, they're probably going to just seize it anyway. And it's going to go into an evidence locker. I mean, it might as well do somebody some good, so I can take it. And you know what I'll do? I'll give some of it at church on Sunday. That's what I'll do. You know, people are going to figure out all kinds of ways to rationalize the keeping of a tiny bit of money. If you're scared, you're worried, you're probably going to take it all to the police. If you're reckless, you're going to think, I'll take it all for me. But probably most individuals, and maybe something as scary as money, people don't want to take because it's too risky. But the studies they've shown have shown that people will generally cheat by just a little bit. And actually, if it's not real money, if for some reason you were to find, like in a field somewhere, like a bag of what?
A check.
Or
is that still?
I don't know if a check, because that does tie you to like a signature or something.
True.
Oh, here we go. If you found like a huge bag of like gold bars, and you don't off the top of your head know the value of gold bars,
Like
you're more likely to take more. Because if it separates it, the further it separates itself from the actual money value, the further away you are from thinking of it as real money. Because if you have to take this gold, go sell the gold, or melt it down and give it for money, even if it's like a whole bag of gold nuggets, you're more likely to take more gold nuggets than you are pure cash. Because you can separate in your mind out that that's not real money. I don't know why but they said that that's the truth too. Like, you're more likely to like take. It's so funny. They said like you could go and you could say that you solved this many equations. They owe you this much cash. You're more likely to be honest than you are if they say I solved this many. Give me this many tokens, and they give you tokens, but you then directly go and exchange for cash on like the next table. People still cheat by more because it's tokens, and it doesn't feel like real money. Isn't that weird? I don't know. I thought it was really weird. But people generally will cheat by a little bit. But, I mean, that's why I think most people would probably say, look at all this money.
Look around.
Handful of coins, walk away. That's probably what most people who walk up to that tree at least would do. But he's trying to show, like, what would like the worst of the worst greedy people do. They're going to walk up, they're going to take this stuff. Now, here's something you mentioned. One of the things that's great about the tale you said, it's a moral tale. It has a moral to it.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the weird thing about it. Who's giving the moral? Is that we have the guy who sells pardons, and he totally admits, because he's drunk as crap. He's like, I can get anybody to buy pardons. Anybody. I'm so good. You know, he's just like drunk and like bragging on himself. Like where is this? Like he says, then I tell them illustrative tales, many a one of old stories from long time ago. For ignorant people love old tales. Such things they can well repeat and hold in memory. What do you suppose that while I can preach and win gold and silver because I teach, that I will live in poverty voluntarily? No, I never thought of it truly. For I will preach and beg in various lands. I will not do any labor with my hands, nor make baskets and live thereby, because I will not beg idly. I will imitate none of the apostles. I will have money, wool, cheese, wheat, although it were given by the poorest servant boy or by the poorest widow in a village, even though her children should die of hunger. Nay, I will drink liquor of the vine and have a pretty wench in every town. But listen, gentlemen, in conclusion, your desire is that I shall tell a tale, and now I have drunk a draught of strong ale. By God, I hope I shall tell you a thing that shall for good reason be to your liking. For though myself be a very vicious man, yet I can tell you a moral tale, which I am accustomed to preach in order to profit. Now hold your peace, my tale I will begin. And the funny thing is, at the very end, did y'all notice how he ended it? If I'm not mistaken, I really hope I'm not mistaken here.
The end of the actual tale?
Yeah, the end of the actual tale. He says, he's so used to telling tales, right? And he says, he ends back in 9:19. He says, but sir, is one word I forgot in my tale. I have relics and pardons in my bag, as fine as any man in England, which were given to me by the Pope's hand, which he literally told us like a few minutes ago that it's pillowcases that he says are like the shawl of Mary and like all that kinds of stuff. Or what was it? Is that right?
I don't remember it exactly.
I can't remember exactly what, but it was that kind of stuff. It's like he lies and says that this is one thing when it's not at all. It's just some random object that you can find anywhere. And then he says, "Yea, for a 4-pence coin unbuckle thy purse right now." He's like, "Y'all shall kiss the relics, come forth, everybody buy from me." And everybody's like, hell no. And it says, "The partner answered not a word, so angry he was, no word would he say." And then the host moves along. So it's like, he tells the tale, and then right when he gets to the end, he's like, Anybody want to kiss my little relics? And they're like, "No, you just literally spent like an hour telling us that everything you say is fake, and it's all to profit you. And then you tell us this little tale, and you think we're just going to like pay you? No, you just gave your whole game away." And he's like, "Shut up." And what do you think was going to happen? Like, what a moron. Like, but I wonder too, it's like that there's that idea, like, can somebody who has terrible problems and seemingly is like amoral, and they don't make decisions based on the best things, and he seems to just be out for himself, can those people tell moral tales that end up bringing mostly good? Like, what I think of here is I think of, like, say, those giant church, those mega church preachers, the TV evangelists, who are on the television, and there's people who they're hurting, they're at home and they're sad, and life's not going so great. They keep having to go to the doctor every week. And there's some guy on TV who's like, "Put your trust in the Lord," and he's yelling real loud, and that sounds, I need that passion in my heart. And so they're listening, and they're just like, every week they feel a little better from this person who says all this stuff in front of a giant golden idol that's spinning. I'm sorry, that's with Joel Osteen. He's the one that had the giant golden globe that spins on his stage behind him. In case you forget it, it's spinning. So if he ever gets boring, you're like, "Oh yeah, there's a giant spinning golden globe there." I don't think it's made of real gold, but it still probably costs a lot of money. And you got, like, I think it's maybe Jerry Falwell. I can't remember. One of them is like, this is totally surreal video that's online one time where somebody's sending questions or something to these two, like, televangelist preachers. And he says, "I've got this other preacher here, and we're gonna talk and answer your questions." And somebody said, like, "Why do you need a jet? Why do you need a jet?" Or something like that. And the other preacher, like, he interrupts this guy when he's saying, we just want to be able to spread our message to as many people as possible and be able to get them as quickly as possible. And the jet, like, helps us in that avenue. And then the other preacher, he chimes in. It's so funny. He goes, "Well, Pete, people don't understand. They don't understand is, this ain't like your little Cessna you have at home, like your little 1-seater, or even like your little 2-seater you have right next to it sitting at your house, where, you just want to take it up, have a little fun joyride. I can't take this little 2-seater and take this all around the world if I need to preach the word. Or my little 1-seater I've got over next to it. I can't do that. No, I got to have a big old jet where I can get as far as I need to go, as fast as I need to go, because we can spread the word better, right, preacher?" And he realizes the dude's coming off as, like, essentially saying, "I got me 3 jets. I got me a plane. I got my second plane. Then I got a jet that I use." And the other dude's just going, "Dude, you sound ridiculous. Stop talking." Because they do. They got, like, a giant mansion. He's got, like, 2 planes. He's got a jet. No, it was a different guy.
He also has.
Oh, he has that kind of stuff too.
He's got a big
Um,
Porsche car or something like that.
I actually was really impressed when I read one time an article by the guy. I think it was the guy who wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, I think. Or one of...
Rick Warren or something?
Might have been Rick Warren. But he said that they started tithing very early on, when he was writing the book, and it started gaining more popularity. And he said, eventually, I started having so much money, I was starting to get worried about, like, my... What do you call it? Like, whether I was still being, like, a moral person. He said, and I talked to my wife, we had a discussion about, we started giving more. He said we started giving 25%. He said, and then I was like, man, we're still just making too much. He said we started giving 50%. He said eventually he started keeping 10% and giving away 90%. And because he felt like they had enough as it was. Like, they had a decent house.
I feel
They
like
had a
that's how you
car.
should live. It's humble.
Yeah, I mean that's how it really. I mean, if you really think about like anybody who claims to care for others, wouldn't just hoard up everything for themselves, as these people are in the story. You know, they would share. They would do their part, and like especially in a guy that's what his job is like telling people, drive your lives with purpose, and it seems like what he did because he was giving. Granted, I can't remember if that's the guy who wrote that book. It might have been another guy, but it was one of those people who essentially like they did most of their work through a book, not from like televangelism. And he said like they gave almost everything that they had away, and they said since they started doing that, they feel so much better about themselves and like what they're doing, and they feel like it's the right thing to do. But then you have people like the partner who come along and they are taking advantage of people.
Yeah.
But can somebody who takes advantage of people in that way, or literally lives their lives the opposite of the way they tell the people to live theirs, can their message still be right? We tend to not like hypocrites, and hypocrites aren't. But can the message of a hypocrite still be good?
I mean, the message itself could be. That's not
Like,
the
regardless of
person.
their
Is,
intentions.
I think people are still just people, and everybody has faults, and especially nowadays, capitalism. Like,
Yeah, and what he's describing is human nature. I mean, he's not even really preaching per se. I mean, he's just.
but he's saying he's not
explaining.
perfect, but he.
Keep going.
I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with what you're saying. I'm just saying, in terms of this particular guy, when he's talking, he's not saying, I'm not perfect. He's bragging.
Yeah.
He is kind of bragging, yeah.
I mean, he
And then
is.
he called, like he said, something like the ignorant people like fables, and then proceeds to tell the people a fable. Because that just shows in his mind they are ignorant, and they'll, do
He thinks
whatever
that
they want.
everybody who gives him money is ignorant and an idiot.
Mhm.
And he says, but I have to do what I got to do to make my money. Says, because that's all I care about is making the money. And so he tells these stories that bring people hope and make people feel good, and that they get closer to the Lord by hearing him. But the only reason he even does it
It's so
is to
easy.
benefit himself.
And it's like a lot about like the power of deception and all of that stuff, and being able to like test who's telling you this stuff and what their motives are. And I think if you can hear that story, that human nature, and take from it what you need to, but still not give yourself over to that man, and like give him your money and fall victim to him, I think that'd be okay. But it just takes a lot of wisdom, I think, for the people listening to him.
To understand.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, I've always wondered, this. Can a message still be good if the person telling the message is... I think that we all should think, as much as we maybe don't like this, we should think, yes, it's possible. That he can be telling a great tale, that he's sending a good message, even though the guy who created the message, his heart is not in the right place. He's great at what he's doing. And it really takes me to this other idea of things where, I mean, we all should sort of... I don't want you to think of this is necessarily indicative of my political beliefs, but... Okay, that's your bag. I thought it was your foot, and I was like, awkward. I was about to be like, whoop, pull the foot back, but no, I don't really mind. I hope your bag's not conscious, is it?
No.
It's an inanimate object. Okay. Beware if he's like, hey, what's this guy doing? But this is not indicative of my political beliefs necessarily. But the person, Trump, I don't like him. And I think he's a moron. And I think he's in charge of a country, and I don't think he should be. It's not indicative of what I think about Republicans or Democrats. I just don't like that man. I don't think that people who are reality TV stars should be put in charge of a country. Especially not ones who filed for bankruptcy many times and then tell people that they're great at making deals. As it claims in books that they ghost wrote. So I apologize if you really like Trump and you're upset with what I just said. I do want to point out, though, that, is anybody familiar with did we talk about this Kavanaugh situation at all?
A little bit.
A little bit. So he's a Supreme Court nominee, and he's up for being put on the Supreme Court. And I don't know if you remember how the Supreme Court works when looking at the government class, but when you're nominated to the Supreme Court and you get on the Supreme Court, you're there for life. It's a life appointment. It's very unique in that political appointments, is that you're there for the entirety of your life. So you want to make sure that those people, because it's different than the partner situation. It's not like he's telling a tale for the rest of his life. I mean, this guy literally is going to be acting based on his sense of morality and judgment. Mm-hmm. And granted, it's possible that he may purely act on his knowledge of the law, and he might be like, my personal thoughts are I hate abortion, but I'll make laws that essentially make it more possible because that's what the law says. He may be like that. And I think it's very hard to be like that, but he may be like that. But in this situation where he's up for an appointment like this, and there was a woman who came forward and said, listen, I can't remember exactly, I'm just going to say sexually assaulted because I can't remember exactly what happened, but she said I was sexually assaulted by him when I was in high school. And we were partying, we were drinking. And people have said, well, I mean, somebody wouldn't, if you come forward 15 years later, or 20 years later, 30 years later, I mean, why now? This seems like it's just a Democratic ploy to keep this guy from, being put into place. Mm-hmm. And granted, that could be true. It could just be a whole bunch of Democrats have gotten a whole bunch of different people to make claims about Kavanaugh. But let's say it is true. And why wouldn't this woman come forward? And you're suspicious as to why wouldn't she do that? I mean, imagine it's in the 80s. We're it seems like it's a progressive time, but I mean, there's still the idea of victim shaming. She was at a party, she was drinking, she was in high school, she probably wasn't supposed to. She goes home and tells her parents, Mom, Dad, this boy was trying to take my clothes off at a party. Maybe that's what happened. She was trying to take his clothes off, or he was trying to take her clothes off, and he was laughing about it. And he tried to do something to me. And they're going to say, why were you at a party drinking? That might be their first reaction, and not, we need to prosecute this kid who goes to this elite school that you also go to. Because it wasn't like a public school, it was a private school. It might cause a lot of drama. She's worried about that. And she thinks, oh, well, I did get drunk. Maybe this is an isolated incident. But it really sticks with her for years. And then over time, he becomes a judge, a federal judge. He's in Bush's administration. I think he's somehow related to he somehow was advising Bush in certain matters. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I guess he ended up maybe turning things around. And he's become a good person or whatever. And she watches all this stuff happen. Then she sees that he's up for Supreme Court nominee. And now that's a little different. Because having somebody, if let's say you're from Terrell, and, you know who Jamie Foxx is, right? You've heard of him, the actor? He actually he went to high school in Terrell, Texas. And so I think his real name was Eric Bishop. Then he changed it to Jamie Foxx. But he grew up there. And so, people from the town, oh, he's the famous guy from our town. And so maybe from the town that she went to, Kavanaugh is the famous guy from her town. And maybe a little story about something that they did that's kind of negative, but you don't want to really tell everybody because you don't want to mess up that person's life, right? You don't really know. Now, her in this scenario, she went through that experience. She said, maybe I'm overthinking it, maybe, whatever. But now this guy's in a position where he's going to be making decisions about what's right and wrong for the next 40 years in the Supreme Court. And that kind of bothers her. She's like, I don't think a guy who did what he did to me in high school should have that kind of job where he is in charge. Because, I mean, if the guy is willing to do that kind of thing, then I don't feel like he's always going to make the right decisions always. He also had, I think, a massive amount of gambling debt, too. So there's, I think, or no, not gambling debt. He spent a lot of money and got into debt buying sports tickets. I don't know. It's very, very interesting. So there's other facts that have come out about the guy. So she comes forward and says this thing. It's very hard for her. It's very hard for you to come and say, but it did come up in therapy 7 years prior, apparently. The husband and her had talked about it in therapy. There's records that the therapist wrote about her mentioning that this is a very formative moment in her life and affected her ability to trust men and stuff. I After that, more women start coming forward, saying something similar happened to me. I was drunk in high school. They tried to gang rape me. There are two of the things that that he groped me, like he pushed me hard up against a wall outside of a bar in some city one day. A woman said, and so many people have been coming forward. So something that Trump, keep in mind, Trump, I don't like the guy. I think Trump's an idiot. Trump was on TV the other day. He was on this tirade. He was mad because Kavanaugh had gone on TV. He wasn't being very aggressive when he was in the interview, so he came off kind of seeming weak to Trump, so he got pissed. Trump goes and talks at a press conference in New York at the United Nations where he was currently. He's also pissed about the fact that he said that our administration's accomplished so much, and people at the UN laughed at him. People from other nations, foreign nations, are laughing at Trump and going, no, you haven't. And like they chuckled out loud, and he said, not the response I was expecting. So Trump's already not in a great place, and he's pissed. And he said, and they start asking him questions in the press conference. He says, listen, I've been accused. I've been accused by lots of women, tons of women. We got this one over here, and they pay him lots of money, to say these things. And I was like, that's kind of true. But something he said, he says, this is America. He's like, these women have made these accusations. He's like, that is not necessarily true, and people are acting like it is true. But these are just people accusing him. He's like, this is America, and you can't just take accusations as truth. And I was like, and that is 100% true. Yeah. It is. Well, this is America. This is due process.
Yeah.
What should happen, if that's the case with those women, is that you investigate, you figure out whether the guy did do the things that he's accused of, and then use the results of that investigation to determine whether or not he should have an appointment to the Supreme Court. Because once you know, is this guy really the thing that they claim him to be, then you know. And if the FBI can do the investigation, they can do it fairly quickly. They said it might take them like 10 days to do the investigation on these things. That's not very long. That's worth waiting to figure out if we're going to have 40 years of a rapist.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the point that Trump made, while he was making it angry, and I don't actually think that the guy's smart at all, he made a great point. And so I don't necessarily think that a story that came from the mouth of a guy, in this case, who has moral tendencies that sway the opposite direction of the very tale he's telling, doesn't necessarily mean that the message he's bringing is any less for it. What is it that people have that phrase? It's like from the mouth of babes. You ever heard that? Like sometimes like kids not knowing what they're saying can say things that are nonetheless incredibly true and poignant and smart. And I think it's important that we all look at the thing itself and not, granted, I think Trump is an idiot for the collection of all the things I've seen him say over time. And I didn't like him back in the days when, I was literally old enough to watch The Apprentice from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I was watching The Apprentice, and honestly, I tuned into the show to just listen to him go, no, you're fired. And like, the things that I was hearing about Trump and like the things he would say on the show, I was like, man, this guy's kind of an idiot. He's kind of like a blowhard, but how is that ever going to affect anybody? And it started to. And so, I don't like the guy, and that my opinions about him are collected over time. But in that instance, he said something I absolutely believe was true. And there's another time I defended him as well. There was a time when a news article was written, and it said he's watching Fox News with his fingers greasy from the bucket of chicken in front of him. And I was like, that's implying he's fat. And that has no bearing on his ability to lead, his ability to think. So for somebody to make a comment like that is completely unfair. It has nothing to do with his ability to lead a nation. So I feel like it's when people make unfair comments not based on anything that is regarding the matter at hand, or when people are unwilling to admit the intelligence of a statement coming from somebody that you might not ordinarily agree with, I think that that's a dangerous prospect. And so I think it's very possible that this story, we can take this and say, wow, this is a very great moral tale, despite having who told us to us. And then this also takes me, in the last couple of minutes we only have to deal with this, to what's been happening kind of in art recently. Because I think we did mention this a few weeks ago, but a guy like Roman Polanski, did I mention him, the film director? he
Oh yeah, and yeah.
Oh,
I think we
yeah.
did talk about this.
like
Fled the country.
yeah, he fled the country, and there was the girl, and it did happen. Like, he definitely did this, but he still produces great art. And some people argue, well, we can't let him produce art anymore. But I mean, if somebody, it's like people are worried that they're going to be infected by the person's ideas. And in this case, he tells the tale. It's pretty good. And I think that, I wonder if people who are sitting there listening are like, I'm not even going to listen to this. I might be infected by it. I might be infected with greed. And the story is literally preaching against greed. Greed's bad. I mean, do we take it maybe he knows because he is so greedy, and maybe that's a reason he's able to speak on it so well?
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that people who just decide, well, I'm not even going to look at it, think about it, see it, they're missing out on that perspective from that person. And even if it is a wrong perspective, that's so important to have, to understand other people. So I think it's dangerous to just say, well, they're bad, so I'm not going to get anything from them. If anything, you want to look more into them and figure out why they are that way and what you can learn to be different from those people.
Yeah, and not even necessarily, I don't think, in a passive-aggressive way, like sometimes, and I'll talk about this in a second, like sometimes Christians can be prone to do, which is to say, like, I'll learn from them because they're lesser than me, kind of that mentality. But to literally try to learn from everyone. I mean,
because anyone can make those mistakes and fall into those traps. Nobody's immune to it.
Yeah, I get worried about the world that I see right now, where Christians dismiss the ideas of atheists, and atheists dismiss the ideas of Christians. All Christians are idiots because I'm an atheist, or all atheists are idiots because I'm a Christian. I saw this video. You ever heard of My 600-Pound Life?
Yes.
There was a lady, she's like 500, 600 pounds, and she calls her doctor, and she says, I need to cancel my appointment because we just have so much going on and I can't get to it. And the doctor gets on the line, and he says, well, excuse me, what's going on? I need to cancel my appointment. We just had so much going on with this move that I can't make it in. And he's like, no, let me tell you what's happening. You have not been keeping up with what you're supposed to be doing. And you don't want to come to the appointment because you don't want to hear me say that you've either not lost weight and haven't been doing what you're supposed to do, or that you've gained weight. And she's like, listen, I might have gained a couple pounds, but it's been hard right now. Like, my foot's been hurting, and we've been moving from one place to the other. He says, no, you are being irresponsible, and you're hurting yourself, and this is your fault. And they talk like this for a few minutes, and you can see she's getting frustrated that he just will not back off, and he's being like a real tough love doctor, blaming her for like this and saying, you come in right now. He's like, just come in. He's like, I can come to you. And she's like, no. And she says at one point, you can tell what she does. She switches the conversation in the moment. She says, oh, I got a question for you. Do you believe in God? And he's like, I don't see how this is relevant at all. I don't see how it's relevant at all. And then she keeps badgering him about it. He's like, this is not about whether I believe in God. This is about you doing what you're supposed to do. Keeps asking, will not back off of it. And he says, yes, I believe in God. Okay? Like, I don't see how that's relevant, but I do. She says, but are you Christian? And I think he was like, yes, I'm a Christian. And she was like, oh. Well, look, what's going on with my weight? I'm just going to put it into God's hands. God's in control. And he's like, no, God is, this is not in God's hands. He's like, this is in your hands. And you're messing it up. You're eating too much. This is your fault. And if you die, it will be the result of your inaction. And he's laying into her thick. But you know what she expected? She expected that this science-y, doctor-y guy, when she asked him if he believed in God, that he was going to say no. And from that moment on, anything he said, she did not have to listen to or respect. And we live in a dangerous world where there are people out there who would listen to this partner and say, like, he's a crook. I'm going to stop listening to anything he says. But he had something important to share, even if it came from a place of selfishness. Maybe he knows selfishness better because he's so selfish. And he's like, you know what, I really know greed. Let me write a story about greed here. And it's kind of weird to think of it like that, but I think it is important that we judge all situations for what they are and not necessarily make assumptions based on the character of those who are saying it. Anybody can say something smart at any moment, as long as we're willing to admit it. So Yeah, I guess that's enough. Talk to you next week. What are we doing, Dr. Faustus? If I get bored of Dr. Faustus, I may talk about Partners Tale more because we missed a whole day of that.
Amoretti or...
Oh yeah, Amoretti. I don't like Amoretti very much, but go ahead and read it. Do not write about Amoretti.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only write about Faustus. Yeah, it's in blue, but please don't write about Amoretti. And I think once we get to Shakespeare's sonnets, I'll be able to explain why. I feel like Amoretti sucks for the most part. I like it a little better now, but compared to Shakespeare.
It's one of our readings. We just don't write on it, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's so short, you'll probably be able to read it in like the Amoretti. You'll be able to read in like 15 minutes.
Y'all have a good day.
All right, later. Y'all have a good one. God, I hate that we missed another day of this. I hate it. Y'all are probably like,